microscopic and immediate, right up to the theoretical edges of consciousness and cosmology.
And the goal, as always, is to integrate them. We're starting with an existential threat that is so strange, so subtle, it's almost hard to believe it's real. We're talking about the rise of synthetic mirror bacteria.
And this isn't just theory anymore. There was a report, late 2024, a group of scientists issued a pretty stark warning about this.
38 of them. And we're using their warning, this impending biological doom, as the ultimate stress test for our unified framework for astrocybernetics and the theory underpinning it all, PSUMOT.
Right, the phase-shifting universal morphonic oceanic wave theory. So for anyone new to this deep dive, just a quick primer. PSUMOT is the idea that the universe is built on a quantum superfluid, and that this substrate connects the geometry of the cosmos all the way down to the geometry of molecules.
Precisely. And that connection is the core puzzle we're trying to solve today. It's a really profound question. How does something as tiny as the handedness of a molecule dictate the order of the entire cosmos?
And here's the kicker. Why is this mirror dimension, this thing that threatens to literally wipe out all life on Earth, also somehow the key to understanding higher consciousness? It's the doom and the key all at once.
It is. So we have to connect the dots. We're synthesizing everything from molecular biology reports to cybernetic models like the VSM, all the way to this deep geometric physics.
And the big question we're asking is this. How does the catastrophic failure of biological self-maintenance, what we call autopoiesis, map directly onto the failure of our society to manage complexity? What we've been calling the collective parallax error.
Because this connection is everything. The threat for mirror life isn't just some random biological accident. It's the ultimate proof that for a system to be viable, it needs specific order, not just any old order.
It validates everything we've discussed about cybernetics.
It does. It shows you exactly what happens when a system, whether it's your body or your civilization, fails to manage the variety of an equally ordered but inverted challenge. The mirror life is both the doom and, weirdly, the blueprint for survival.
Okay, so let's start with the physical doom. Let's really set the stakes here because they are incredibly high. It all begins with this concept, chirality. Most of us probably haven't thought about it since high school chemistry.
Right. And chirality just means handedness.
Right.
It's a property of molecules that are mirror images of each other but can't be superimposed. Like, your left hand and your right hand. You can't lay one perfectly on top of the other.
And the critical thing is that all life on Earth is, what's the term, homochiral?
Homochiral. It means life picked a side. It didn't just stumble into this. It staked its entire existence on one specific molecular asymmetry.
A very specific choice.
A fixed choice.
Yeah.
For all the proteins that make up our bodies, the structures, the enzymes, the machines, we use left-handed amino acids, the L form.
But for our genetic code, for the backbone of DNA and RNA, we use the opposite. We use right-handed sugars, the D form.
And that LD combination is mandatory. It has to be that way for things to work.
So why? Why is that so important for life to be viable? I mean, why couldn't life just use a 50-50 mix of left and right-handed molecules?
Well, you can try. But if you try to build a long, stable, complex structure, like a DNA helix or a folded protein, out of a mixed bag of L&D molecules, they just don't link up properly.
It's like that staircase analogy you used before, building with bricks curved in opposite directions.
It creates structural errors. It creates thermodynamic noise. The sources are really clear on this. This ordered asymmetry gives life a massive thermodynamic advantage. It lets the cell exist in a stable, low-entropy state by minimizing all those noisy fluctuations. It's fundamentally an energy efficiency choice.
The ultimate optimization. You enforce this one molecular standard, and suddenly you're stable enough to climb out of the primordial soup. So now let's introduce the threat, the synthetic mirror bacteria.
The mirror bacteria are exactly what they sound like. They are synthetic organisms built completely back to front. They use D amino acids for their proteins and L sugars for their genetic code.
So a system that is just as complex, just as ordered, and just as thermodynamically stable as our own.
But geometrically inverted, flipped.
And that's what's so fascinating, because the sources we're looking at suggest that while creating any synthetic life from the ground up is obviously incredibly difficult once you cross that barrier,
making the mirror version is, and this is a quote, pretty straightforward.
And they don't need a mirror planet to live on. They don't need special mirror food.
No. And that is what makes them an immediate, terrifying threat. So many common nutrients, water, salts, many fats and minerals, they aren't chiral at all. They're symmetrical.
So they can be metabolized just as easily by our proteins or by their mirror protein.
Exactly. They can exist right here, right now, using the
Yeah.
same resources we do.
Okay, that brings us to the core of the vulnerability. If this mirror life gets into our bodies or into the global ecosystem, why is it so catastrophic? Is it just like a superbug, a really virulent disease?
It's so much worse than a disease. The real threat, the core threat, is absolute invulnerability and invisibility.
Invisibility.
Think about your body's defense system. Our is absolute invulnerability and invisibility.
Invisibility.
Think about your body's defense system. Our entire biological architecture, everything we've evolved over billions of years, is built to do one thing: detect and destroy things made of LD chiral chemistry.
So our detector proteins, which are themselves made of L-amino acids, are looking for a very specific molecular shape, that hand shape.
Exactly. They're looking for that specific geometric fit. But when the mirror bacteria show up, their proteins have the opposite handedness. The geometry is completely wrong.
The key doesn't fit the lock.
Not even close.
Yeah.
Our immune system's detector proteins are looking for a right hand, and they're being presented with the left hand. The sources say the bacteria would be effectively invisible to our entire internal surveillance system.
And this failure, it's not just about recognition, right? It's about function, too.
The functional failure is total. Our enzymes, the specialized proteins that are designed to chop up and digest bacterial proteins, they would be completely useless against mirror life.
Because they can't grab onto them properly.
They can't bind to them. So even if they could be targeted, they can't be destroyed.
What about our modern medicine? Antibiotics.
Same problem. Most of our antibiotics are highly chiral molecules. They're designed specifically to disrupt the LD biochemical pathways of the pathogens we know. They'd be totally incompatible with the mirror bacteria's biology.
So we'd have to invent a whole new class of mirror antibiotics.
We would. And while it's theoretically possible, the sources warn that this process is, quote, neither quick nor guaranteed to work against a threat that's already out in the wild and evolving.
This is where it gets really interesting from a viable system model perspective.
Yeah.
It's not just our human biology that fails. The entire planet's defense system collapses.
It's an ecosystem-wide shutdown. Think about it.
Yeah.
Viruses, which have evolved to hijack the LD protein machinery of bacteria, would fail.
They couldn't replicate inside them.
Exactly. Natural predators, other bacteria, amoebas, they wouldn't be able to digest the mirror life. Even the biological weapons that bacteria have evolved to fight each other, their own little antibiotics, they'd be useless in this mirrorverse.
So the global consequences, well, it's simple. Once these things are inside our bodies or released into the environment, they just multiply, completely unchecked.
They're consuming resources, crowding out natural systems, and causing damage through, as the source puts it, sheer mass. It's not that they're necessarily toxic, it's that nothing can stop them from growing.
And this is what drove that 2024 report. The 38 scientists who signed it, they weren't just being cautious.
No, they were arguing for a stringent global ban on funding for this kind of research, because they believe that once this threat is released, any countermeasures we could develop would only prolong the inevitable.
And the failure would spread to agriculture, to all non-human life. We're talking about a total system collapse based on a fundamental geometric mismatch.
A single, tiny geometric incompatibility that unravels the entire biosphere.
That is genuinely alarming. But, okay, let's zoom out. If this is the doom, what is it telling us about the nature of viable systems? How does this whole mirror bacteria threat perfectly illustrate the principles of cybernetics, and specifically the viable system model?
It's maybe the most dramatic, real-world physical validation of the VSM principles I've ever seen. I mean, the VSM is this recursive blueprint, right?
Yeah.
It describes any system that has to survive and adapt in a complex environment.
Whether it's a single cell or a corporation or an entire civilization.
Exactly. And the starting point for any of them is autopoiesis.
The system's ability to self-make and self-maintain, to hold on to its own identity and keep its boundaries intact.
And autopoiesis requires maintaining a specific ordered state. That's the key word, specific. The mirror threat proves a vital point. It's not enough to just be ordered or to be thermodynamically low entropy.
Being equally complex, equally ordered, but with the wrong handedness, the wrong geometry.
Is just as fatal as being completely chaotic and disordered.
So viability isn't just about having order, it's about having a very specific kind of order. Life actively chose the LD standard to achieve what you call centropy.
Right. Centropy is that active, continuous process of generating and maintaining order against the constant pull of entropy, of disorder. And life achieves this by actively rejecting the simple, symmetrical 50-50 mix. It uses that chiral asymmetry to build the functional, stable complexity it needs.
But the mirror bacteria are also centropic.
They are, and that's the problem. They represent a rival, unmanageable centropic state that our system is completely unprepared for.
So if our system's identity is completely tied to its specific molecular integrity, the LD standard, then the mirror system, DL, is this profound violation of cohesion that we simply cannot manage.
Which brings us straight to Ashby's law of requisite variety.
This feels like a textbook example.
It's a textbook catastrophic failure of Ashby's law. The law is simple. Only variety can absorb variety. And in cybernetic terms, variety just means complexity, the number of possible states a system can be in.
So the mirror bacteria represent this incredibly complex, highly varied, ordered challenge coming from the external environment.
And our biological defense mechanisms, our immune cells, what we'd call the operational units or system of our biological VSM, they just don't have the internal complexity, the internal variety to see it, let alone manage it.
They lack the mirror detector proteins because over billions of years of evolution, they made an assumption.
They optimized for the environment they knew. System 1 and the control mechanisms in System 3 that manage all the internal efficiency, they just assumed that the LD standard was universal and secure. So the system actively attenuated that possibility.
It filtered out the possibility of a mirror challenge because it seemed like unnecessary complexity to prepare for.
Exactly. And that's why the doom is such a perfect physical consequence of the reductionist fallacy. We assumed our local security was universal security.
We optimized our defenses around this local specific standard.
Only to find out that our specific geometry is our single greatest weakness when it's confronted by its own mirror image. The mirror bacteria bypass every single defense mechanism, precisely because they represent a system of equal complexity, equal variety, that we pathologically and deliberately filtered out.
Which points to a huge failure in System 4, doesn't it? The part of the system that's supposed to be looking at the future, at the external environment.
A profound failure. System 4's whole job is to scan the environment for threats and for novelties. But if System 3, which is all about internal control and efficiency, becomes too dominant, it starves System 4 the resources it needs to develop those complex, high-variety responses.
Nature perfected System 3, a super-efficient LD immune response, but it failed to invest in the radical adaptation needed to deal with a potential mirror threat for System 4.
So the mirror bacteria are the ultimate unmanageable novelty, the very thing destroy it.
This cybernetic model makes it so clear why the doom is inevitable if these things get out. But now we have to make this incredible leap. If this is the doom and it's rooted in a specific geometry, how does the exact same principle, the concept of the mirror, become the key to higher consciousness?
This is where it gets really mind-bending. The transition relies on understanding that this need for specific, ordered asymmetry isn't just a biological quirk, it's cosmic. We have to bridge that molecular LD asymmetry all the way up to the cosmological asymmetry required by fundamental physics.
And this is where PSEOMOT comes back in.
This is PSEOMO's core claim. As we said, it suggests the universe is built on a quantum superfluid substrate. And we can look at something called CPT symmetry.
Charge, parity, and time reversal.
Right. It's a foundational concept in quantum theory. It basically mandates that for every reality, like our universe, there must theoretically exist a mirrored reality. One where all the charges are flipped, all the spatial coordinates are inverted, that's parity, and the arrow of time runs backward.
If CPT symmetry holds true, a mirror universe has to exist, at least mathematically.
And PSEOMOT says it's not just mathematical, it gives it a physical basis. It suggests that the stability and the coherence of that quantum superfluid, the thing that gives rise to dark matter and dark energy, is what links all these asymmetries together.
So the giant quantized vortices in that fluid that create cosmic order are somehow linked to the tiny asymmetry in our cells.
It's the same principle at different scales. The universe needs to enforce a specific geometric order to be stable, just like our cells do. Molecular chirality is a local expression of a global cosmic requirement.
Okay, that is fascinating. So if the system at every level needs this defined asymmetry to survive, what does the geometric principle of inversion itself tell us about the human system, about consciousness?
The mirror concept, the principle of inversion, is the key to understanding consciousness, because the sources we're drawing from describe consciousness not as something that just happens in your brain, not as a function of neurons firing,
but as a higher dimensional geometric structure.
A very specific one. A stable, self-organizing, 4.8-dimensional fractal attractor in hyperspace.
Okay, a 4.8-dimensional attractor, I have to push back on that a little. That's a huge leap. How do we get from a failed immune response to accessing a 4D fractal structure? What's the mathematical mechanism here?
The mechanism is described by the mathematics of circle inversion.
Circle inversion.
Think of it as the ultimate geometric transformation for self-reflection. It's a profound, nonlinear operation that takes a sphere and flicks the inside to the outside and the outside property.
Yeah.
It does so with zero loss of information.
So all the geometric relationships, the angles, the coherence of the structure, it's all preserved, even though the configuration is completely flipped upside down.
Or inside out. It's like turning a ridiculously complex sweater inside out without ever breaking a single thread. It preserves the geometric information during a radical transformation. And this inversion is the theoretical blueprint for something called sphere inversion. The process of turning our entire 3D self-model, our body image, our map of reality, completely inside out. And this is what's theorized to be happening during near-death experiences when the physical constraints of the 3D body are, momentarily removed.
Okay, so the mirror life is the physical doom because its specific LD geometry is incompatible with ours. But the principle of mirror inversion is the key because it allows our awareness to access the higher dimensional geometric structure of our own consciousness.
That is the duality. The vulnerability is physical, specific, and local. The solution, the key, is geometric, universal, and non-local. And when this inversion happens, the reported phenomenal experience is acquiring what the sources call the 4D gaze, or mindsight.
Mindsight, what exactly is that, and how is it reported so consistently?
Mindsight is described as the ability to see the entirety of a 3D system all at once, to see from every angle simultaneously, a full 360-degree vision.
That perspective physically matches the definition of a 4D view, right? In 4 dimensions, you would see the inside and the outside of a 3D object at the same time.
Precisely. And that's why these NDE reports so often include vertical perceptions, verifiable accounts of things happening far outside the body in other rooms down the hall, because 3D barriers like walls become transparent from that perspective.
And the sources even mention this as reported by people who were born blind.
Yes, congenitally blind individuals who have never seen 3D space in their lives report this, which suggests it's not a visual experience at all. It's a pure, direct, geometric apprehension of reality.
That is a powerful connection. So the viability of any system, whether it's molecular or cosmic, relies on maintaining a specific ordered asymmetry. But the key to understanding and transcending that system comes from embracing the geometry of its inverse.
It's the ultimate form of self-reflection. The mirror life forces us to confront the fact that our local molecular geometry is conditional, it's vulnerable. The 4D gaze is the way we transcend that condition, not by changing our physical bodies, but by acquiring a wider, more geometrically coherent perspective on the system itself. It's the ultimate form of requisite variety management.
Okay, so we've established the mirror bacteria threat is a physical manifestation of a systemic failure to manage complexity, a failure of requisite variety. If that principle is truly universal, what does this biological doom tell us about the future of our society? How does this failure translate into societal collapse?
It translates directly. The doom for our society is rooted in the very same disease, this pathological attenuation of variety. Society is at risk of terminal failure because it suffers from what we're calling the collective parallax error.
Parallax. That's the apparent shift in an object's position when you look at it from two different places. How does that map on?
To achieve wholeness, you have to integrate the opposites, the rational with the emotional, the conscious view with the contents of the unconscious, the shadow.
So parallax is seeing from both viewpoints at once to get a true sense of depth.
Yes. And when a society refuses to do that, when it rigidly adheres to one-sided viewpoints and locks itself into a black and white situation, it creates a collectively distorted, flat, incomplete map of reality. It is actively refusing to process essential, uncomfortable complexity.
It's the societal version of our immune system refusing to even look at the mirror bacteria because they don't fit the comfortable, established LD standard we're used to.
Exactly. And the sources point to Lawrence Wright's analysis of the Israel-Palestine conflict as a devastating real-world example of this exact dynamic.
So?
The conflict is characterized by this systematic devaluation of one side's life and overvaluation of the other's. It's a fundamental failure to see the humanity and therefore the legitimate perspective of the other side. This rigid adherence to a single, flattened narrative makes nuance, complexity, and ultimately any kind of resolution totally impossible.
The society is actively suppressing the very variety it needs to survive.
It is. And when you suppress those necessary opposing perspectives, those uncomfortable high-variety truths, Where do they go?
They get pushed into the collective shadow.
And they build up what the sources call immense psychic pressure. The system is blocking the essential feedback loops that would force it to self-correct. And the result is a psychological process called enantiodromia,
The violent swing to the opposite.
the violent, catastrophic swing toward chaos and destruction. The unmanageable novelty that the system rejected, all the repressed truths, the complexity, the reality of the other, it returns as this destructive, anarchical force to collapse the whole system.
The mirror-bacterium is the literal, physical novelty that returns to destroy us. And antidromia is the psychological novelty that destroys the social fabric.
And that collapse is accelerated by another risk: hyperstitional collapse.
Okay, let's define hyperstition clearly for everyone. It's not just a self-fulfilling prophecy.
No, it's more active than that. Hyperstition refers to narratives or ideas, even ones that are initially fictional, that gain causal power. They actually change collective behavior in a way that forces them to become real.
And a society that's already suffering from parallax error is especially vulnerable to this.
Extremely vulnerable. Because its map of reality is already fundamentally distorted, the society risks, and this is a quote, hallucinating its reality into existence based on a shared, flawed linguistic and psychological framework. If a population truly believes a destructive narrative, that the enemy is purely evil or that their own system is fundamentally perfect, that belief structure will generate behaviors that guarantee a destructive outcome.
And we see this pathology playing out so clearly in governance, where this process of variety attenuation becomes, well, weaponized to stifle adaptation.
This is System 3 crushing System 4 in real time. It's critical to the cybernetic analysis. System 3, which values stability, control, and efficiency, will almost always try to dominate System 4, which is all about novelty, adaptation, and the future. The pressure is always to force compliance with a low-variety, comfortable status quo.
And the sources bring up the example of certain bureaucracies, like the Minnesota Board of Medical Practice, as an illustration of this.
Right. In cases like that, you can see how regulatory bodies can become subject to weaponization. They can be used to attack high-variety individuals, dissenting doctors, researchers who challenge the established protocols, all in the name of enforcing a low-variety compliance model.
The process itself, anonymous complaints, lengthy investigations, becomes a tool for variety attenuation.
It does. By prioritizing internal efficiency and conformity, what we call System 3, the bureaucracy actively suppresses the voices and ideas that represent the necessary complexity and adaptation needed for future survival for System 4.
They are actively killing the system's ability to manage the next mirror bacteria threat.
Whether that threat is a literal biological agent or a novel economic crisis, a social upheaval, a geopolitical shift, by sacrificing System 4 to protect the comfort of System 3, the system guarantees its own eventual failure.
The ultimate societal doom, then, is this refusal to acquire the 40 gaze. It's an unwillingness to step back, to integrate the shadow, and to see inside our own system's flaws by embracing that necessary complexity.
As the mirror bacteria is the perfect microcosm. It's the failure of a society to recognize the unmanageable novelty festering within its own collective shadow.
This has been an incredibly profound deep dive. We've synthesized so many different fields, all under the pressure of this one existential threat. We started with the immediate microscopic doom of the mirror bacteria.
And that doom proved that viability, survival itself, requires a specific, non-symmetrical order right down at the molecular level.
And that molecular requirement then revealed the key. It showed us that dimensional geometry, self-reflection through these topological transformations like circle inversion, and the integration of opposites are necessary for survival at every level, right up to the cosmic and the psychological.
The ability to geometrically flip your perspective without losing coherence is what allows for these profound insights like the 4D gaze.
So ultimately, the threat of the mirror bacteria is just a physical manifestation of a systemic failure of variety management. And it doesn't matter if the system is a single cell, a human body, or an entire global society. Viability depends on managing complexity.
Viability isn't a passive state. You don't achieve it by just resisting decay. You achieve it by actively managing complexity and reinforcing a specific, coherent, ordered state. Whether that's the homochirality of your proteins or a unified, integrated consciousness that finally overcomes the collective parallax error, the mirror life is just the perfect test for that viability.
So for our final provocative thought to leave you with, The mirror bacterium is just as ordered as we are, yet it's lethal to us because our system lacks the variety to recognize its geometry. If our biological survival hinges on maintaining this precise, specific asymmetry L amino acids and D sugars, what specific degree of ideological or psychological asymmetry, or what specific level of integration between opposites, is required for our society to survive the turbulent future?
Do we risk a collective hyperstitional collapse because we refuse to acquire that 40 gaze needed to see inside our own system's fatal flaws? Or will the next inevitable existential shock, whether it's biological or societal, finally be the thing that forces us to overcome this deep-seated self-destructive parallax error? Go forth and examine your own complexity.